right, so hello and welcome to another Feature Friday. So today we're going to talk about safety plans, what they consist of, and how to use them in Application Suite Manage. So safety plans are not new. They've been in the product for quite a long time. They are a way to predefine hazards, hazardous materials, and the precautions that must be taken while performing work, and any lockout tagout points and procedures that your staff needs to be aware of and, of course, execute. So safety plans are developed for specific types of equipment and their operating context. Then, as work is processed, the safety plans go along with the work orders, making the safety details clearly available for staff to review and refine as needed. But as I mentioned, safety plans require several elements to be constructed prior to their use. These elements are hazards and their precautions, hazmat definitions with precautions as well, and then, of course, the tagout points and any lockout procedures. So let's take a look at all of these and then build and use a safety plan. All right, we're going to start out here in Application Suite Manage. And this is version 9, just so you know. So we're going to start out with hazards, and we go underneath the planning module, and we're going to roll into the safety section here. I might also mention that this particular instance does have the HSE add-on, which does have additional safety functionality in it, but we're not going to be using that here today. We're just going to go out of the box manage. So, under the safety section, we start out with hazards. Go ahead and select hazards. Allow the screen to refresh, and then I'll use the refresh button over here to fill my screen with the existing hazards that are on the system. For our example here today, we're going to take a look at the sulfuric acid hazard. So I'm going to point out just a couple of things here. The name of the hazard, and then of course its description is your choice. And the type of hazard, you have the option for identifying different types of hazards, and you can certainly add to this domain. In our case here, we've chosen health. The important part about designing hazards is the associations they have. So do you want the hazard, in this case sulfuric acid, to have precautions listed, which will be on this tab? And the answer is going to be yes. In this case, do you want to have hazardous materials? And so if you wanted to indicate the hazardous materials that are involved here and their NFPA ratings, you can introduce those here as well. And then, can it have tagouts? Now, in this case, it's a chemical issue, so we're not going to have a tagout, so we're not going to activate that tab there as well. So this is important as you set up your hazards to make sure that you can allow it to have precautions, any hazmat, and then any tagouts. All right, let's move over into the precautions here. So as you can imagine, working with sulfuric acid, you're going to want to have, at a minimum, gloves and goggles, and certainly wear those PPE. And of course, any other precautions that you may think are important when dealing with this type of chemical, you would list them here. I will make a note that the precautions are built in the Precautions application. So you can either jump over there and build a new one and then return with the value, or if the precaution already exists in the list, then you're able to just choose it here. Pretty straightforward. Let's go look at a hazard that only has precautions. And I'm going to roll down here, and I'm going to grab this high voltage one. And you can see there's no hazmat involved, there's no tagout involved in this particular case, just precautions. And I go to the Precautions tab, and there they are listed ahead of time. Now let's go look at one that has some tagouts. So again, I'm going to roll down here some of these predefined ones, and here is an electrocution one. And it has no precautions listed, no hazmat listed, but we certainly have tagouts. And now I can go over to the Tagouts tab, click on that, and I can see the tagouts that have been brought into this particular hazard. And again, these tagouts, just like precautions, there is an application, which we will go to next, to define these lockout, tagout points and procedures. All right, so let's go take a look at the lockout, tagout application. So I could jump to it from here, but rather I'm going to jump over to the menu. So again, under Planning, under Safety, and I find Lockout Tagout. Let me go ahead and refresh my view here. Okay. So these are the defined tagouts and lockout procedures. In these cases, for specific locations and/or assets. Okay. So I'm going to mention that the required state field over here, when we're actually building these, this is just a text field. We'd recommend that you create a domain and modify the application to add a pick list there for users rather than text. So we're going to pick the BR451 tag out here, okay? And the scenario, we'll just kind of talk through here a little bit, is we have a pump that's driven with an electric motor, and that electric motor is controlled behind the scenes with a circuit breaker. So we're going to do a couple of things to lock out. Is one, we want to lock out the circuit breaker so that there's no energy on the motor, and then there's a mention of actually putting a locked collar on the motor itself so it won't turn at all. And of course, this particular pump is pushing sulfuric acid, so our safety plan is going to be rather complete. All right, so our tag out is going to be related to the location where this pump is along with its motor. And then the lockout operations, now these can get rather sophisticated and detailed, but the idea in our situation here is that we want the breaker to be open. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to put that locking collar on that motor, that asset 49332 there, and that collar is going to be locked. That'll be the second thing we do. And then you'll notice when we bring things back into service, the first thing we're going to do is remove that locking collar, and then we're going to re-energize that circuit breaker. So again, these operations could be rather lengthy and detailed, and it's up to you as to whether you're doing this for a location or an asset. And that's your basic lockout tagout. All right, so let's put this all together in a safety plan now. So I go back over to Planning and Safety, and I roll down into Safety Plans. Refresh my screen here. And I'll just kind of mention that safety plans are reusable in much in the same way like a job plan is, so keep that in mind. So the one I'm focused on, the one I've already built here, is this one at the very bottom for this breaker. And so here's my safety plan. It obviously has an ID and it has a description. And part of the safety plan is identifying all of the assets or locations that are involved in it. This way, when you attach the safety plan to a work order, then all of the hazards and such come in that are related to these assets and locations. So that's important to list everything involved in this safety plan from an asset and location standpoint. So you'll notice in the safety plan now very familiar tabs: hazards and precautions, safety, hazardous materials, and then of course the tagouts. So on the hazardous and precautions tab, I have already gone in and selected the sulfuric acid. And when I selected that, it brought in the precautions that are related to sulfuric acid. So this pre-definition of the hazard and the precautions is really helpful there. Then, of course, the hazardous materials, right? If there are any, certainly there is that hazard that we mentioned of sulfuric acid, so that comes in. And then, of course, the tagouts that we just talked about, the hazard that exists because of the electricity, and then, of course, the tagouts and the lockout operations that we just looked at that are built here as well. So again, once your hazards and precautions and hazardous materials and your tagouts for the assets have been pre-built, then when it comes to building the safety plan, it's just a matter of selecting those things, and voila, you have a populated safety plan. Once you've made your changes, of course, you just click Save and you're good to go. All right, so let's now use the safety plan. So I'm just going to roll down here, create myself a brand new work order. Doesn't really matter what it's related to or anything like that, but what I'm looking for is I want to use or select the safety plan, and then I want to see the safety plan tab populated. So I come down, and underneath job details, I'm going to choose the particular safety plan here. There's my values. Okay. I've got one more. There it is, right at the end. Choose it. Save my work order. Obviously, there's a lot of other things I should fill in for a work order, but just for the video here, I want to show you then. Here's my safety plan. Okay. There's the hazard listed, the hazardous material, of course, and then the lockout tagout procedures that people are able to see. All right, so there you go. Safety plans. Define your hazards, your hazmat, any precautions need to be taken, tag out points, lockout procedures, put all that in a safety plan, relate that to the different assets and locations that are related to it, and then apply them to work orders as you go. So a great safety feature that is in Application Suite Managed. Hope that was helpful, and we'll see you next week.